Nobody has a great definition of discipline. Not your parents or your teachers or your coaches, not the gurus selling you cold plunges in their line of supplements. They give you metaphors. They describe what it looks like. They tell you stories about people who had it. They say things like, you got to do the hard things, and showing up when you don't want to, and grinding through the discomfort. Those are descriptions of behavior. Not one of them is a definition, and that drives me nuts. Now, I'm a professional martial arts instructor, 30 years in the industry. I have asked students, parents, and other instructors, people whose entire professional identity is built around discipline, what it actually is. And nobody knows for sure. And here's the part that got me. Parents walk into my school and the first thing out of their mouths almost every single time is one of two things. My kid needs confidence, or my kid needs discipline. They want it for their kids, probably because they don't really know what it is. 30 years ago, I went on a quest to figure it out because I had to, because it was a major part of my job. It's what my clients wanted. This video is going to give you 3 things: what everyone has been calling discipline and why it's not discipline at all, the real definition you can actually use, and what that looks like in real life so you can start applying it immediately. Let me show you what I mean. So, what is the accepted definition of discipline? Ask anyone, and I totally think you should. You should go around asking people what discipline actually is. It's incredibly eye-opening. You're going to get some version of the same answer. Do the hard things, grind, suffer, do what you hate, wake up before you want to, work harder than anybody else, push through the pain. And if you go the other direction and you ask a parent or teacher what discipline means for a kid, you're going to get something completely different. Something in line with correct the behavior, punish the bad choices, make them do what they're supposed to do. One side defines discipline as suffering and grinding. The other side defines it as force and compliance. Both are trying to solve the same problem, getting a person to do something they don't want to do. That's the entire accepted model of discipline. And look, I'm not saying those things don't have their place. Hard work is real. Consequences matter. Showing up when you don't want to, that's just part of life. Pressure matters too, though. Pressure reveals things. Pressure exposes the truth. Pressure shows you whether something actually works or not. The problem isn't pressure. The problem is confusing pressure with discipline. The modern definition assumes that behavior is created by force. Force from you, force from somebody else, force from the system, force from some authority figure, and sometimes that works. The problem is that it only works while the force is present. I mean, you've seen it in kids. Why does the most disciplined student in the school suddenly become completely unstructured the moment nobody's watching? You've seen it in yourself. Why does your morning routine collapse the first week something easier pops up? Why does the diet disappear? Why does the workout stop? Why does the momentum evaporate? If force was the answer, if grinding and suffering and pushing through is what discipline actually is, then it should hold, it should stick. It should transfer into the next situation and the next one after that, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because force is not discipline. Force is compliance, and compliance is not the same thing. And choosing to suffer is stupid. Life's hard enough as it is. Why choose to make it harder? I know that's not what gurus want to hear, but suffering is not a destination. It's not a goal. It's not something you should be chasing. Compliance produces behavior that lasts as long as the force does. The moment the force stops, the alarm, the clock, the program, the accountability partner, the boss, as soon as all that stops, the behavior stops with it, because behavior was never attached to a belief, never attached to an identity, never attached to a standard. It was attached to force. That's not discipline. That's a leash, and you cannot build a life on a leash. Let's start with the actual word. The original meaning of discipline is to learn or be taught. Not punish or grind or suffer, it means to learn. That one word dismantles everything that last section just described. Because if discipline means to learn, then the goal of discipline is not suffering, it's discovery. And if the goal is discovery, then discipline is not something you endure, it's something you pursue. I learned what that actually means through fighting. In fight, correct means whatever works. There's only what works less, and what doesn't work at all. Reality is the judge. And I realized at some point that life works exactly the same way. So here is the complete definition. Discipline is testing strategies against reality until you discover what actually works for you. And every word of that matters. Testing means experimenting, inventing, trying, seeking the answer to, not following, not complying. Testing means you're going to try something out in the real world and find out what actually happens against reality, not against your theory or your good intentions. Reality doesn't care what you meant to do. It only cares what happened and whether it worked or not. And you keep testing until you discover what works for you, not the group, for you. Because people are different. Two people can be chasing the same goal and need completely different approaches to get there. That doesn't mean that you're weak. That's just reality. That is the definition. It's not a grind, it's not suffering, and it's not force. It's discovery, learning your methods. Let me show you what that actually looks like in real life. And I'm going to use an example that has nothing to do with martial arts because this definition applies to everything. Let's say you have a belief that diet and exercise help people live longer and you want that for yourself. So you build an identity around it. Maybe not I am an athlete because maybe you're not. And assuming that you're an athlete alone could kill the whole thing before you even start. How about just something like I am an active person? It's simple, it's honest, totally achievable. Now your standard flow follows from that and you say, I will do something physically active every day. Now we're at discipline because we have to learn what that even means for us. Here's what discipline actually looks like. You think, okay, healthy people go to the gym. That's what I've seen. That's the obvious first strategy to test, so you go. And you walk in and immediately you're overwhelmed. Machines you do not recognize. People who look like they were conceived in a petri dish. And when you research it, you find videos online telling you about progressive overload, protein timing, pre-workout, and 14 other things that you don't care about. And most people stop right there because they're just overwhelmed. And they're confused. They confuse, I don't know what I'm doing yet with, this is not for me. Those are not the same things. And a side note, if you see that attitude in your kids, it should be pretty clear where they got it from. Now, not knowing what to do yet is the beginning of the learning. It is the first real pivot point. The first moment where discipline either develops or it disappears. So instead of quitting, you reduce the problem to its smallest possible piece. You pick one thing like bench press. You watch a couple of videos about how to do it safely. You ignore the sets and the progressions and the noise. You go in and you practice doing bench press. And you get sore in your chest and you kind of like it. That is data, real data from reality, not from a program somebody sold you, but from your own experience. Your own experience testing a strategy against the real world. So you go back, you do bench press again. After a few times, you get bored, which is not a problem. Boredom is just curiosity looking for the next thing. So you pick one more exercise, let's say curls. Same process, watch a video, ignore the noise, go test it, get sore, like it. Now you have two things you like, and the loop continues. Not because somebody's forcing you, not because you're suffering through it, because you are genuinely curious about what comes next. Because the experiment is actually interesting, because finding out what your version of this looks like is, and I want you to hear this clearly, fun. Now here is where it gets even more interesting. What if somewhere in the process you hit a wall, not a physical wall, a mental wall? You start saying, I hate the gym. And you use that as a reason to stop. Discipline says, wait, why do you hate the gym? And you got to be specific. Is it the people? Is it not knowing what to do? Is it feeling judged when you walk in? Because I hate the gym is not an answer. It's a signal. And the signal's pointing at something specific that hasn't been identified yet. Maybe you trace it back and find a values conflict sitting inside your identity, like you value your health, but you also value not being judged by strangers. And those two values are competing against each other every single time you walk through the door. Now, a real decision has to be made. Which value outranks the other, your health or the opinion of people that don't matter and you'll never see again? That's discipline, not pushing through the hatred, investigating it, tracing it, finding the specific thing that's blocking the learning and dealing with it honestly. And here's the thing, you could do this exact same process with dancing, karate, cooking, starting a business, with any area of your life where you have a belief and an identity and a standard you're trying to live up to. The gym is just an example. The mechanism is universal. You test it, you learn, you adjust, you stay curious, and you repeat and make sure it stays fun. That's discipline. And when it's built on your beliefs, your identity, and your standard, it is actually fun. I like to think of it like this. This body is a 1971 model human. It has strengths and limitations and buttons and whistles, and I'm curious about what it's capable of. So I'm going to spend my life trying to figure out what the best is for it. And nobody else but me can do that. So here's what we know. You weren't really given or taught real discipline. You were given compliance and told it was discipline. And when it kept falling apart, when the routine collapsed and the habit broke and the motivation disappeared, you blamed yourself. Stop blaming yourself for that. You weren't weak or lazy. You weren't really struggling with discipline. You were practicing the wrong thing your entire life, and nobody told you. You were following what somebody else imposed on you based on what worked for them. But here's what I need you to understand before the next video. The fact that you were given imposed discipline instead of real discipline does not mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you can't build it now. It doesn't mean the window is closed. It means you get to start correct and honest. And starting honest is the only place real discipline will ever get built. Because real discipline starts with one thing, your curiosity about how awesome you can be. And maybe your willingness to learn. Now, in the next video, we're going to talk about why most of what you were given growing up was not discipline at all. It was imposed discipline, not self-discipline. And once you know what it is, you will see it everywhere. Subscribe so you don't miss out.